Round of applause for finding this room. I gave myself a personal tour tonight of all the spaces, and the gentleman in the back helped me out and helped me find the room. So congratulations to everyone here this evening for finding your way to this space on this beautiful evening. Also, if anyone's feeling very young at heart, there is a teen karaoke jam night, open mic over there. So feel free after this if you want to travel that way and reach, get some youth juice. You can head that way. Again, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Deniko Gibson. I am the Director of Campaigns and Engagement for the New Pennsylvania Project. And I am so glad to see all of you out tonight. So thank you for coming. Hopefully everyone has gotten a chance to get some refreshments. And again, the back room is out that way and up the hallway. And so we're going to get started tonight for the Congressional District 1 Candidate Forum. And we are excited about this night and looking forward to the discussion that will be happening. So I want to tell you a little bit about the New Pennsylvania Project's mission. The New Pennsylvania Project is a voting rights organization with year-round primary focus on voter registration, civic education, and mobilization. MPP centers historically disenfranchised and often neglected Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, immigrants, community, and the youth in our work. And so we consider the youth between the ages of 17 and 35. I got a couple of, just missed the cutoff. Through civic engagement, we ensure all eligible voters feel compelled to exercise their freedom to vote in the Commonwealth. And isn't that what's important for us? And I think many of us are here that agree with that it is important that everyone feels a part of the election process. So for the agenda tonight, doing the welcome and glad again that you are all here. Candidate forum ground rules. I used to work in daycare, and so I would just say, behave. I will just say, behave, be on your best behavior, so your mom and dad will be proud. And so, I do want to we'll do the introduction of tonight's moderator, who was our CEO, Kadida Kenner. The candidate forum will start. Audience questions, a Q&A, and closing. And so if you have not gotten an opportunity to write down a question, we do have index cards over on the table. So you can hand them over, you can take them right back over there, and our team will gather those. We won't be get to everyone. But again, like I tell the kids at daycare, next time, you'll get it done. So anyway, feel free to write your questions down and we'll kind of go through those as well. I'm going to introduce our CEO is Kadida Kenner, and she founded the New Pennsylvania Project in May 2021. And she often talks about that started this organization with just one person and some volunteers, and that was just her. And so now we have grown 3 years later. We have 65 staff and growing. And so we are excited about the work that we are doing across the Commonwealth. We've opened up many offices all the way up to Allegheny, Pittsburgh, Erie, Beaver, and countless other counties. And so we are excited to be here and hosting this candidate forum, and thank you for your participation.
seen since COVID times, earlier COVID times, we're still in them, right? So, yes, thank you for the introduction, Danico. My name is Kadida Kenner. I'm the founding CEO of both the New Pennsylvania Project and the New PA Project Education Fund, so two affiliated organizations, both nonpartisan organizations, both founded to expand the electorate, both founded to engage communities on a year-round basis, and not just a couple months ahead of an election, but year-round. And the work that we do is very important. You should know that in the last 2 years, we have registered more than 40,000 Pennsylvanians to vote. Let me tell you how hard that was this year. Because prior to July 21st, if you all remember what happened on July 21st, prior to July 21st, we were having a hard time getting folks registered to vote. They didn't want to do it. They still are a little trepidatious about that too. And we know that we must encourage folks to the polls while we still have that freedom to vote. And so I come to this work tonight, in the vein of my ancestors who have done work similar to mine. My great-grandfather was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee in 1911, doing similar work to what I'm doing today. And so this work is very meaningful. To myself and our staff, we've got Pete and Suji over there on the side with us tonight. I'm hosting this event and putting a lot of logistics together to make this happen. We're really excited because we did this really last minute, and to see the amount of people who showed up in this room must speak to the candidate you're about to see. A few ground rules that we have. So tonight's event was organized as a candidate forum, meaning that we invited both candidates for CD1 to attend. And at this very moment, we have yet to hear from U.S. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick's campaign. We did, however, hear from Ashley Ehasz, and she is here this evening. And we are very excited to have her, and she is coming to the podium here, and we are very excited. We are very excited to have Ashley with us today. And so we're going to have a few questions, and I'm going to sit over here. I have a few questions, and then we have soliciting questions for you, and so we'll be able to get a few of these. And some of these, I'm looking at them already, or some of the questions I've already asked him. So we're all on the same page. And so tonight, let's get this thing going. We're going to engage while we have the one candidate who decided to show. And we're going to have a good evening, have our voices heard, and listen to what it is that's important to you as well. So let's take it easy. And here we go. Okay. Welcome to the candidate forum. Thank you for answering the call. Of course, no, glad to be here. Thank you for answering the call. So this is a room full of folks that seems like a lot of your supporters here. Thank you. I want to say that the New Pennsylvania Project got started because of lots of folks in Bucks County. And a lot of folks who currently sit on our board are from Bucks County or ran for the seat that you're running for. And so Bucks County means a lot to us as an organization. It's also been very difficult to organize in Bucks County, I'm just going to say. And we are hiring for Bucks County. So Ashley, thank you for being with us. We're grateful to have you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service and even wanting to run in this seat and take on this huge role. We know that Pennsylvania, this election is going to run through Pennsylvania. It is. We know it's going to run through Pennsylvania, and we know that we've had lots of visits already from lots of candidates coming here, and it seems like every day somebody's here in Pennsylvania.
Yes, yeah, we get someone new, especially right here in Bucks. It's ground zero for the election.
So my first question for you this evening is because I didn't do a thorough introduction of you. I want you to be able to introduce yourself to maybe somebody who does not know you in this room. So if you don't mind, if you want to take a moment and just tell us why, who you are and why you're best suited to take on Brian Fitzpatrick in this moment.
Sure. And actually, I'm gonna walk around a little bit, if that's okay. First, I want to start by saying thank you to New Pennsylvania Project for organizing this. Thank you all for being here. A lot of hard work went into this, and I am grateful. And I am sorry that you don't get a proper candidate forum tonight, but you have me. And my name is Ashley Ehasz, and I grew up to a single mom who herself grew up to a single mom, so we know what it's like to struggle. And I grew up right here in southeastern Pennsylvania, moving all around because we were trying to stay one step ahead of eviction notices, and actually for much of my life we struggled to put food on the table. And so at the age of 17, with an age waiver in hand, I joined the Army, because like so many in our country, that was my pathway forward to stability and opportunity. And I earned my way into West Point with the help of my next door neighbor, who was a high school teacher and who saw potential in me, and so he helped me with my application. And that sense of community support is actually really, really important to me in my campaign. And when I was in the service, I was an attack helicopter pilot, but more importantly, I was a commander. And as a commander, I led several hundred soldiers overseas and here at home, and so I learned how to make a decision in a crisis. And make no mistake, we are in a moment of crisis. And in this moment of crisis, Brian Fitzpatrick is nowhere to be seen. As a commander, I learned a thing or two about what it's like to be accountable to those you seek to lead. Brian can't even be bothered to give you all a few minutes of his time tonight. Families all across our community are living paycheck to paycheck and struggling to afford the basic necessities. And millions of women across our country, including myself, were made second-class citizens in the very country I fought to defend because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Brian Fitzpatrick voted for a nationwide abortion ban, which would overturn Pennsylvania's state law and our protections for abortion right here in the Commonwealth. And yet, he does not want to be held accountable for that anti-choice voting record. Our democracy is under attack, and I am running for Congress to stand up and fight back and protect our country and our community, because our community deserves a leader who knows and shares the values of our community. Our community deserves a leader who shows up for us. And I believe, I know, I am that leader that Bucks and Montco deserves, and so I'm so grateful to be with you all here tonight, and I look forward to the conversation. Okay, next question for you, so thank you for that. Of course. Next question for you this evening. I'm looking at a room full of folks. PA01 represents Bucks County and a sliver, as they call it, of Montgomery County. What do you think is important to your constituents who are in this room right now? What do you think are on their hearts and their minds? Why are you wanting to get to DC and fight for them? What is on their minds? So we know that Pennsylvania's First wants pro-choice, pro-democracy leadership, and those two things overlap. They're not two separate things. We know that in a democracy that is under attack, that folks who seek to do harm will often go after the most vulnerable members of a community first. And when it comes to women's reproductive rights, that is those who seek to do harm going after women and going after them and criminalizing women for being women and criminalizing their health care. So first and foremost, we know that Pennsylvania's First wants pro-choice leadership. And just to be clear, Brian Fitzpatrick is not pro-choice leadership. Someone who votes for a nationwide abortion ban is not pro-choice, regardless of what he tries to tell you. I will make sure we pass the Women's Health Protection Act, which would protect, once passed, will protect women's reproductive rights at the federal level. And then I'll make sure we protect our democracy. We protect our voting rights. Day one, HR 1 will be protecting our voting rights and making sure everyone who can vote can actually vote. And when we also look at what folks in this community care about and what they need to be able to afford to live with dignity. And we know that right now, there are too many families out there struggling to make ends meet. And we deserve someone who, one, understands what that's like, I come from a family that actually understands that. Brian Fitzpatrick comes from a political dynasty where things were just given to him. He has no idea what it's like to make the trade-off between putting food on your table or paying rent that month. No idea. Having someone in Congress like myself who understands what that's like, my family understands that, is important. And we will reduce housing costs, we will make childcare affordable, and we'll make sure that our senior neighbors can afford to live with dignity with their Social Security pensions protected. And that's what I'll fight for in Washington.
Pennsylvania Project, we're a voting rights organization, and so defending democracy is very important to us. Having access to the ballot is very important to us. Pennsylvania ranks in the bottom 30 percentile of all states in the country for ease and access to the ballot. Where do we fall in that bottom 30 percentile? In between Mississippi and Arkansas. Pennsylvania, the birthplace of American democracy, it's not very easy to vote. It's not very easy to get registered to vote. So we would love to hear from you this evening, your thoughts on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and other ways in which you can legislate and protect our freedom to vote. So I would love to hear more from you about where you stand on protecting all of our freedom to vote.
Absolutely in support of it. And so HR 1, and I believe it was Whip, Catherine Clark, who just said HR 1 in the next session of Congress will be John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That will be the first piece of legislation that we will all pass, and that is absolutely important, and that's why it's number 1. And to go even a step further, we need to make sure there are protections in place so that way there aren't poll taxes applied to those who seek to vote. We need to make sure that it is easy and available to vote for those who qualify to vote. And that means making sure we have automatic voter registration, making sure that the dates and availability of when you get your ballot, how you turn in your ballot, making sure that the information that maybe if you made a mistake but it's easily fixable is gotten back to you. Because I know here in Bucks County in particular, we have a really great program of following up with folks to say, hey, you maybe made a mistake on your ballot, here's how you fix it. That is good democracy. But it also shouldn't be hard to vote by mail or vote in person, whichever way you choose. And so as we put protections in place to make it easy and accessible for those who are qualified to vote, that's what we must do. And when I look at, again, the erosion of democracy and those we go after who are most vulnerable, those who can be maybe misled by what's online, or older folks, or those with disabilities who don't have easy access to their in-person ballot box, the continued attacks we see, particularly on mail-in ballots and mail-in voting, it a real threat to our democracy as well.
Thank you for that. We appreciate that as a voting rights organization. Okay, let's get into some policy.
Of course.
We all know where we were, whatever November date that was in 2016. I'll never forget where I was in that moment. I'll never forget where I was in 2008 when history was made in this country. We would love to know from you, where were you and what was your feeling and what do you plan to do around the Dobbs decision? Where were you when the Dobbs decision came down to overturn Roe versus Wade? Where were you? What was your thought process? And where are you on this issue?
So, I'm gonna have to think. I was in a meeting with my team. So it was, I think, June 24th, 2022. If I'm off by the date, but it was definitely late June 2022. I was in a meeting with my team because for those who might not be aware, I ran last cycle as well. And I made sure very early in the campaign, we were talking about women's reproductive rights, because as a young woman, as someone who served overseas to protect our fundamental rights, to see them taken away from us here at home was particularly painful for me. So I was in a meeting with my team and we were strategizing for the day, and the decision came down, and I'm very proud to say the majority of my team, both last cycle and this cycle, are women. And so we had a moment of just taking care of each other and checking in and saying, hey, today is going to be really tough. Who needs a moment? But then once we had that tough conversation, we got down to work, because as a woman running for office, as a combat veteran running for office, and as someone running for federal office, against an anti-choice elected official. I knew my job, the best work I could do for every woman in this country was to fight to win. And just to be very clear on my position on a woman's right to health care, reproductive health care, the decision as to whether or not a woman has an abortion should be between her and her doctor.
Yes.
It should not, it should not involve any politician, not myself, not Brian Fitzpatrick, certainly not Brian Fitzpatrick. And that's where it should lie. And as I shared earlier, I think these policies these bans that we're seeing put in place are attacks on women and criminalizing being a woman. And in the wake of the Dobbs decision, I think we all saw in the Dobbs decision there was an architecture, an infrastructure for them to erode more and more rights. And I think a lot of us saw that writing on the wall. And in the 2+ years since, we have seen attacks on IVF, on birth control. And we've seen women die due to these Trump-Fitzpatrick abortion bans that have been put in place. And I think as the 2 years have gone on, and it has only gotten more horrific, I think a lot of folks are realizing how bad the damage was. And so to have Brian Fitzpatrick, who willingly sold out every woman in our community and across our country for his own political gain to vote for a national abortion ban. And by the way, he voted against the Women's Health Protection Act, both before the Dobbs decision and then after the Dobbs decision, just to double down. He saw what was happening and he doubled down. So to have him very smugly doing these things, taking away these rights from women, and then in particular not be able to show up tonight to explain to you why he made you all second-class citizens, I find to be an affront, frankly.
There is always the importance of your first 90 days in office. There's only so much you can do depending upon who is going to be the Speaker of the House and what the makeup is, the composition is in Congress. Best case scenario, that maybe it's a Hakeem Jeffries. What would you like to see happen in your first 90 days, 100 days in office?
So, yes, as you mentioned, first things first, I'll be voting in Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker of the House, and I'll be proudly voting for that. And then we'll get right down to business, protecting voting rights. That is the good work of democracy, protecting democracy, making sure our voting rights are protected, but also making sure we have a safe and lawful transfer of power, because it will be Vice President Kamala Harris who is our president at that time. So that's also protecting our democracy right there. But when we also look at Pennsylvania's first, and I might be getting a little longer in the tooth than the 90 days you gave me, but something I'll be working towards is, of course, protecting women's reproductive rights. But also, if you look at our district, we are the last red district in all of southeastern Pennsylvania. And if you compare us to our sister districts, we got some work to do with our economy. We are thriving, of course, we have great small businesses, but we need to make sure, especially younger families, feel like they can move here and get started and put their kids in schools. And I lay that at the feet of Brian Fitzpatrick. We have seen some real rises in extremism in our community, whether it's folks at January 6th or what happened in the Central Bucks School Board, this last 2 years where we had right-wing extremists trying to have cultural battlegrounds in our schools, but we fought back and won and took back control of that board. And yes. So I see my job is not only bringing economic growth, continued economic growth to Pennsylvania's first, but also keeping it a place where folks feel good about bringing their kids to our schools and getting them enrolled and making sure we do not have right-wing extremists trying to take over in Bucks County. And that's what we work on.
I want to stay on policy a little bit longer. I'm looking around this room here in Bucks County, and it is a good-looking room. I see some folks maybe got off work and came right here, or some folks maybe that are retired and We're glad to have you here today too. What I'm not seeing in this room is a lot of diversity. Not seeing a lot of diversity in this room. And I want to ask you this question, where you stand on making sure that all folks in Bucks County feel represented and heard, as there's others that are not represented in this room that you would be representing as them being your constituent. So we would love, as an organization that centers communities of color in our work, we would love to hear what you're going to do for the communities of color out there that exist and are just trying to get by and live life and prosper.
So, first, I will show up for them. I will make sure I am ready. Have the important conversations with all folks of this district. And first, I will walk the walk by making sure I have a diverse team on my staff, both in district and in Washington. And you're absolutely right. We've got, I'm going to come back to the issue of extremism that we also have in this community, where we have seen incredibly, I want to be very clear, Pennsylvania's First is wonderful. We have a lot of wonderful folks here, but we also know that we have some folks on the far right extremist end of the spectrum who are seeking to tear down diversity within our community or make it uncomfortable for folks to come and move here with their families. And just as a reminder, Brian Fitzpatrick endorsed some of those Moms for Liberty candidates in that school board election. Ones who were spewing hate against anyone who did not look like them, anyone who is on the LGBTQ plus or in that community. They didn't want anyone who did not look or act just like them. And that type of hate, that type of extremism is not welcome here. And so I will make sure I not only model it within my office, but I'm meeting with these communities, creating an inclusive culture and asking, what can I do for you, and actually listening.
A lot of talk around immigration reform. We're a country of immigrants. And yes. And it's a challenge. We have folks on our team who are not citizens as of yet, who are working to help us get out the vote. They can't vote. Let's believe they're on the ground right now, knocking on doors, trying to make sure those who are citizens are out here, making sure their voices are heard and voting. Where do you stand on protecting of the border and at the same time ensuring that this continues to be a nation of immigrants?
So just to be clear, I do believe we need security at our southern border. We need to make sure that the folks providing that security are given the resources to do so efficiently and humanely. Give them the training, give them the resources to actually secure the border. But beyond that, we also know that immigration and diversity makes our country really strong. We know that our GDP goes up when we have good immigrants coming to our country and giving us their talents. And so we need to make sure we are also creating pathways to citizenship for those who have only known America as their home and who pose no threat. We need to create pathways to citizenship for them. We also need to protect dreamers and DACA recipients at the federal level, make sure they are protected. And then from a bureaucracy point of view, we need to make sure our immigration courts are well-resourced and that we get rid of that backlog there and improve our asylum systems and just make things more efficient, because a lot of times we have folks who come to this country seeking to do things the right way, the legal way, and then they get caught up in a system that takes years and years and years to process their case. And just as a reminder, Brian Fitzpatrick had the opportunity to address this issue. There was a very strong bipartisan Senate immigration bill that was ready to go, and Brian voted against it because he did not have the courage or the conviction to stand up to Donald Trump, who came in and said, hold on, don't pass that through. That will actually solve this problem, and I need something to campaign on. So Brian has shown us time and time again where his loyalties lie. It's not on fixing anything in our community. It's not on addressing the issues that folks care about. It's about making Donald Trump happy, which, if you are ever in doubt of what a re-election for Brian Fitzpatrick will look like, it will be in deference to Donald Trump, and make no mistake of
I got a chance to look at your website and see where you stand on several issues. We know that right now there's a heightened attention to addressing gun violence in our country right now. And so curious about where you stand on that. Where are you as it relates to the Second Amendment? Where are you as it relates to making sure that our streets and our schools are safe places for our kids to be?
So many in here know, but for those that don't, or if you forgot from when I introduced myself a few minutes ago, I served in the Army. I carried weapons of war. I carried M4s and M9s. I have fired missiles from an aircraft. So I know what it's like to carry a weapon. I know what the skill set is like to carry a weapon responsibly, and I know what the maturity is like to carry a weapon responsibly. And so that weighs heavily on me when I'm looking at I don't want to just say issue of gun violence in our country, the public health crisis that is gun violence in our country. And to be clear, I support the Second Amendment for those who will have and own guns responsibly. My own brother is a hunter. I have lots of friends who make sure they store ammunition separately from their weapons and know how it's used and do not use assault weapons. Those are responsible gun owners. And in fact, I think the Democrats would be well served to bring more of them into the fold so we can have this conversation around responsible gun ownership and go after those who seek to be criminals. And so just to make sure my position is clear, I am in favor of passing an assault weapons ban. With Brian Fitzpatrick, he co-sponsored an assault weapons ban bill last summer, I believe it was. And once he saw that it was gaining some traction and could potentially pass in the House, he made sure he killed it. That is someone who talks the talk, but can't walk the walk. And we also need to make sure universal background checks are something that are instituted at the federal level. And we need to make sure we hold gun manufacturers who advertise their weapons to those that they know will not use them responsibly. We need to make sure they're held accountable as well. There is a really common sense approach to this, and I will tell you, this is just a personal story from my campaign. As I interviewed people to join my campaign for both last cycle and especially this cycle, a lot of them are much younger than me. And I always ask, what got you involved in politics? And nearly every single one of them said, I was raised in the era of gun violence and shootings in our schools. Some had lost friends. And so that was their entryway into politics. And don't get me wrong, join politics for whatever reason gets you active, but it should never have to be that reason. It never should have to be that reason.
One more question from me, and then we're going to get to the audience questions.
Perfect.
Several of which I kind of already asked. So my final question for you, I'm going back as a voting rights organization. I'm going back to the election and protecting our election. So I want to talk about election security for the moment. And maybe that's in the same vein, not only talking about election security, but also talking about government accountability as well in that. And so I just want to hear from you where you stand. We're a room full of folks who are going to cast our ballot by November 5th. Everybody registered to vote? Everybody voting? Good. We want to make sure our votes count. We want to make our voices are heard. We want to make sure that January 6th never happens again. Where are you on election protection? What measures would you take? What type of legislation is possible to ensure that our election date doesn't move from November 5th, but to December 11th, when, they're actually getting the ballots and saying, yes, I certify this election. Where do you stand on election protection and making sure that our voices are heard at the ballot box?
So as someone who fought to protect our rights overseas, I talk a lot about reproductive rights because that is a huge issue in this moment. But fundamentally, protecting our freedom to vote, our freedom to have our voices heard, that's the fundamental of my time in service. And it was to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, which, by the way, is the same oath of office that Brian Fitzpatrick took. And when I look at the real contrasts up here, one, you have one candidate who's with you, one candidate who is not. When I look at that oath of office to protect the fundamentals of voting access and protecting Americans, Brian Fitzpatrick has absolutely violated that oath. He has had numerous opportunities to stand up and protect Americans and our Constitution, and he has failed us. And just today it came out, myself along with 50 other candidates running for office right now, Democratic candidates at the federal level, we all signed an open letter that was published in the New York Times, and we said, hey, we will stand up and defend protecting elections, protecting the right to vote, and we will protect and defend safe and secure elections and make sure there is no further attempts to steal it. And a lot of that comes down to how you talk about the election. And Brian Fitzpatrick tries to have it both ways. He will talk the talk, but he will never walk the walk. And he had 2 opportunities to impeach Donald Trump. The second one for what he did on January 6th. And Brian Fitzpatrick said, no, that's not worth my time. And he even voted, when we talk about his votes for leadership, he voted for Jim Jordan twice as Speaker of the House. And that's someone, that's the appropriate reaction. That is someone who not only wants to pass a national abortion ban, but also wanted to throw out the election. And Brian said, that's fine by me. And then he also, of course, voted for Mike Johnson as Speaker. And Mike Johnson was the architect of trying to overturn the 2020 election, including throwing out votes here in Pennsylvania, including Pennsylvania's first. Yep. Brian Fitzpatrick said that is A-okay by me. So as someone who was 17 when I raised my right hand to take that oath to defend our Constitution, I take that very seriously. Whether it's reproductive freedom, whether it's protecting the right to vote, whether it's protecting the safe and lawful transfer of power, I will. And a lot of that is making sure we don't use that dangerous rhetoric. We don't cave when someone puts pressure on us. And mark my words, every time Donald Trump asks Brian Fitzpatrick to cave, he will. He cannot do this.
So doing our due diligence as a nonpartisan organization, of course we had to look to the challenger here, the incumbent, and interesting information about Brian Fitzpatrick. So in the 115th Congress, he was ranked the second most bipartisan member of Congress, of the House, excuse me. He went up from second place to the number 1 ranked U.S. Congressperson in the House in the 118th Congress as the most bipartisan. So I say all this, so that's factual information. I say all this to ask the question that came out of the audience, which is, are you willing to expend political capital to find solutions and common ground in order to move policy forward?
So that goes back to, so the short answer is yes. So I served with a lot of folks who were, well, I served in the military with a lot of folks who were not of the same political persuasion as I was. And it didn't make a difference, because at the end of the day, we all had one goal, one mission, and that was to just get things done, protect the American people. And I will do the same thing in Congress. We need people who will do that. And I'll be clear, Brian Fitzpatrick can say whatever he wants about his own record. First of all, he's not here tonight to defend it. And that tells us a couple of things. One, he knows his record is not stellar. If you are actively hiding from your constituents, actively hiding, no one has seen him in weeks. You do not have a record of bipartisanship you're proud of. You do, I'm going to stop using you just so we don't get confused. He knows his votes for a nationwide abortion ban are bad. They are not good. No one will like them. This is an overwhelmingly pro-choice district. He knows he's on the wrong side of history. He knows his failure to impeach Donald Trump has put him on the wrong side of history. He does not want to be asked about those votes. So he can claim to be whatever he wants. He's not here to defend that record, so I will set it straight for him. He is not who we deserve to have in Congress. He is someone who, again, talks the talk, but does not walk the walk. And he's tried to skate by on that for a long time, and frankly, I think he has. But this year, in 2024, when too many folks know that a Donald Trump presidency is a clear and present danger to our country, too many folks know that we have to hold on to the Senate, and too many folks know that Vice President Kamala Harris, when she is president, can't get anything done without a Democratic majority in the House. Too many folks know that Brian Fitzpatrick will not get us any further in this community. And I am all about working across the aisle, and I want to be very, very clear. Right now, with Brian Fitzpatrick and his MAGA cronies, there are not a lot of moderate Republicans in the House in this moment. But I have hope and I have faith, because I can tell you, we have good Republicans here in our community. This doesn't come down to Democrat versus Republican, and in fact, we have a whole cohort of Republicans for Ehasz who have come out to support us because they realize that this election is bigger than anyone, even bigger than Brian, and he would be shocked to hear that. There are too many folks who are dedicated to getting the right thing done, including myself.
I love this question, and I'm glad someone typed this up for me to ask, and my mother would be very upset if I didn't ask this question. What policies for seniors will you promote if elected to Congress? How do you protect seniors? What policies will you promote?
So we were actually just with some senior communities in the last week or two. Senator Chris Murphy came out and met with some folks with me, which was just wonderful to have. And we talked a lot about Project 2025 and the direct threats that we have on everything. If I stood here, I'd be here all night listening what's in there. For yourself, please Google Project 2025 and the thing you want to find in there, and I guarantee you'll find it. It includes, tracking women in their pregnancies to see if they have an abortion or a miscarriage. It has a tax on overtime pay, and it also specifically has a tax on Social Security and pensions. And we know that there are a lot of folks struggling to make ends meet in our community, whether it's young families trying to get started, or some of our senior neighbors who are just trying to make sure that they can make ends meet, especially on a fixed income. So it's making sure Social Security is protected, and that we don't raise ages on that we protect 401ks and pensions and don't go after them, which, by the way, Project 2025 does. And also making sure in-home care is covered by Medicare, making sure we can negotiate even the prices of even more drugs with Medicare, expanding who qualifies, who can do this. We can cap prices. Brian Fitzpatrick voted against capping the price of insulin at $35. He said, no, not for folks in my community, we won't have that. So he has stood in the way of any forward movement for our community for years at this point. And there is no single member of our community who has not been affected by his poor leadership. And that includes some of our senior neighbors as well, particularly with their ability to live in their homes on fixed income.
So I might take you back to a civics education course in this moment asking this question. I had to remember it myself here. But the question, well, let me preface it by saying this. Lots of money being spent in these elections. Yeah. Lots of money being spent in these elections. And a lot of millionaires and billionaires spending a lot of their money in these elections, who are anti-labor and very pro-corporation. So this question coming from the audience is, would you repeal the Taft-Hartley Act and help give power back to unions and workers over corporations?
Oh, absolutely. And just let me tell you a few things I'm really proud about. First, the support of unions that I've gotten this cycle. We have UAW, we have AFT, which is the American Federation of Teachers Pennsylvania. And in particular, they were all, hold on, you can clap for this, they were particularly angry around what happened in our school boards last year and the fact that Brian, again, endorsed those Moms for Liberty candidates, so they came ready to put up a fight. So you can please clap for that. And we also board who not only endorsed, but endorsed against their international and said, hey, we're not going to support Brian Fitzpatrick, unlike you all. We know what's actually going on in our community, and we support Ashley. And that was wonderful and brave of them, so I'm so incredibly proud of them. And my grandmother was in a union. I saw firsthand the protections that come from being in a union, and I also want to make sure I model those values that unions bring to the table, not only in what I do as a legislator, but also talking about it and sharing stories. So when I was a commander, I was involved in the process of transitioning soldiers out of the Army. So a lot of them, you know, they reached the end of their contract, they would transition out. And I can tell you firsthand, and I was a maintenance commander, so we worked on airframes, so we did hydraulics, we did sheet metal, we did all these things. A lot of my soldiers were able to transition into good union paying jobs because those unions were there, that leadership embraced them. And this is, you know, kind of an addition too, but a lot of those soldiers were going through a really important transition, and we know that a lot of veterans are at their most susceptible to mental health issues in those 2 years, first 2 years after getting out of the Army. So not only were the unions there to embrace them with good jobs and a good community, but also embrace them during a rough transition and said, hey, we know you're going through a lot, you have friends now in this community, you can build a new community, we will be here for you. So I will always support our brothers and sisters in the unions. And we want to make sure we keep big corporations in check. So I do not take corporate PAC donations. And that is incredibly important, whereas Brian Fitzpatrick not only does, he is one of the highest, he's one of the members in Congress with the highest rate of donations from corporations. And I made it very clear to my team from day one. I said, we will not accept a dime of corporate PAC money because I do not want to be bought by Big Pharma or any of these other organizations. And so when you judge where someone's values lie, always make sure you look there in your candidates as well.
All right, thank you for that. I got some rapid fire, so I'm gonna count and kind of got through them. So just yes or no or something very quick. Will you serve the public and make sure that your office is open to the public?
Absolutely. I am here. I think we're showing that tonight. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. If elected, will you have town halls like this? Will you have town halls? I mean, I'm looking at some folks that help get Senator Toomey out of the way. So will you have town halls, or will you make yourself accessible?
Absolutely. And just, I know this is supposed to be quick, but I want to make sure I get this out there. I will not only have town halls, but they will be available to everyone. And Brian has not held one in years, and actually the closest he got to it was he did an event in Lower Bucks with the Chamber of Commerce where he made people pay to come see him. So, sorry if this is a spoiler for anyone who doesn't realize it, but we as taxpayers already paid his salary. So to then turn around and charge them to then hear him talk about the legislation he is or is not passing, that's an affront, not only an affront to democracy, just very insulting. So yes, I will hold town halls and I will not make you pay to celebrate.
And the last one, because, you know, my name is Kadida, and I usually have to say it about 3 times for folks to get it. So the question is, how do you pronounce your last name, and how do people remember how to pronounce your last name?
Oh, I wasn't expecting this, but I have had to answer this quite a lot. So it's Ehasz, it's like Haagen-Dazs, but with a long E, so that should stick.
Yep. All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you. I want to give everybody a
Thank you, everyone. And I really want to give another thank you, not only to new Pennsylvania Project who put this together, but I know we have staff from the community college who are working here. We've got security working here. There's you all who are here, so please give a round of applause to everybody. All right, before you all exit,
that's it. I just want to make sure that we get to close out here. And so I'm going to bring Katie Personette. She's our Director of Development and Policy. And you have to excuse how we look today. We were knocking doors. And I changed clothes in the bathroom. So we were knocking doors today. I want to thank Ashley Ehasz for being with us this evening and having a great candidate forum. And so I'll introduce you here to Katie, who's going to close us out.
Thank you again to Ashley Ehasz and all of your service, again, in the Army, as well as your service for going through this candidate forum and Congressional District 1. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you all here this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate every single one of you, your important questions, and being here supporting this candidate forum. Again, my name is Kadida Kenner. I'm the Director of Development and Policy. And so if you like what you saw this evening, we are doing additional candidate forums across the Commonwealth. So follow us on Facebook. We have Suji in our house. Suji, where you are? There's Suji. She's our social media manager. Follow us on Facebook, all the social medias, to make sure you're following our work and get plugged into all the additional candidate forums that we are holding. And if you want to support our work of year-round voter registration, civic education, and mobilization, come see me. I have a QR code that you can scan, and we will accept your donation, no matter how small it is. We are an organization that has incredible support of more than 5,000 individual donors, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country. And so I'm really proud about that. And so I had to just plug that little thing in there. But thank you again so much for all of your time, for your important questions, and being a participant in our democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you all, and have a good night. Please, if there's refreshments, please take them. And I'm proud to say that we didn't lose one person to karaoke, so thank you for staying. Have a good night.